and welcome to Political Forum, a CAN TV organization and service to the community. I am your host, Dartesia Pitts, and today's guest is Alderman Joe Moore of the 49th Ward.
Hi, Dartesia. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on, Alderman. As I indicated earlier, this is Political Forum for Wednesday, January 18th. Thank you for appearing on Political Forum. I'm Dartesia Pitts, a board member here at CAN TV. You're watching a live, interactive program brought to you by the board members of CAN TV. And be sure to tell your friends that they can also watch this show online at cantv.org/hotline. We welcome your questions and your comments for Alderman Moore by calling us at the number that you see at the bottom of your screen, 312-738-1060. All right, Alderman Moore. It's a lot going on right now.
A lot going on.
But before we get a chance to get to all the great things that are going on, can you tell the viewers
and some of the not so great things.
Yes. Can you tell the viewers about about who you are?
Sure. I have had the honor of serving the residents of the 49th Ward, which is primarily the Rogers Park community, since 1991. So I've been in for a while, but have really enjoyed overseeing the revitalization of the community. We have been able to show that you can have lots of improvements in a neighborhood and make it more livable with more businesses, more development, while at the same time maintaining the neighborhood's diversity. We're still probably the most economically, racially, culturally diverse community in the city of Chicago. We're in essence a microcosm of the city, and I've always felt that was, probably my greatest charge is to show that a diverse community, economically and culturally mixed community, can be a successful community, and that you can have improvements without having displacement.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to show the audience your overhead, and this is your ward office. Is that correct?
That's right. We're at, as you can see, at 7356 North Greenview Avenue. It's in a strip mall on the southwest corner of Greenview and Jarvis. And you can see there that my email address and our website, ward49.com. And I would encourage anyone who's watching who would like to be part of my electronic newsletter, where I bring people up to date on information and news and events taking place in the community, to sign up for it. All you got to do is go to the homepage of Ward49, that's the number 49.com, and put in your email address at the top of the page, and we will make sure that you get our electronic newsletter. So you'll become a fully informed either resident of the 49th Ward, or if you're just interested in knowing what's going on in the greatest and most dynamic ward in the city of Chicago, sign up for it as well.
And right before we went on air, you also told me that you're on Twitter, and a lot of discussion happens there.
On Twitter, on Facebook. I also am active in some of the neighborhood blogs, such as Every Block and the Rogers Park Neighborhood News Facebook page. So I realize that more and more people are getting their news and their information on the social media, and I try to be as active with social media as possible. So look me up on Facebook and Twitter and Every Block and Next Door. So we're all over the place.
That's good. And Alderman Moore, you're from Chicago, correct?
I was born in Chicago, actually raised in the city of Evanston, just north of Rogers Park.
Okay.
But moved back to Chicago after I graduated from college back many years ago, 1980. So I've been a resident of the 49th Ward for 36 years and alderman for the last 26 years.
Awesome. So you know your ward.
I know my ward.
Grown.
Yep, I know the ward like the back of my hand.
Yes, very organic. So we have so much. Well, we only have 25 minutes to get an opportunity to talk to you, but there is so much going on in Chicago and the nation. And of course, I want to be able to discuss some of these with you. The biggest headline in the news right now is that President Barack Obama, who is a hometown Chicagoan, is stepping out of the office and his term is up, and Trump, President-elect Trump, And stepping into the office.
President Obama hasn't left office yet, but I already miss him.
Yes.
What a class act. He was a class act. He was a person of great dignity. His family was a great acted themselves with a great amount of dignity and respect for the office and respect for the nation. And you know he's going to be sorely missed. We don't know. Well, we sort of. I'm afraid we kind of know what to expect with the new president. You know, I respect President Obama's encouragement that we give President Trump a chance. However, we're being prepared in the 49th Ward. You know, Trump got a grand total of 7.8% of the vote in the 49th Ward. So people already were pretty skeptical about this man, and we still are. Last Monday night, we hosted a meeting with our Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky and political commentator Don Rose and William McNary, who's executive director of the Illinois or Citizen Action of Illinois, and Gabe Gonzalez, who's a community activist, and we had over 350 people attend this forum on Trump and how to be prepared to resist Trump if he makes good on some of his promises to go after the rights of women and immigrants, and people are charged up. In fact, the 49th Ward Democratic Party is sponsoring some buses to go to the take people to the Women's March downtown in Chicago on Saturday.
Okay.
And I encourage everyone to either join us on our bus. We'll be leaving. We'll be meeting at the 49th Ward Democratic Party office at Greenleaf and Ravenswood at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. And it's important that we have as many people as possible joining the demonstration, so we send a strong message to the rest of the world and certainly to the Trump administration that we're watching, and we're going to protect people's rights, and we're not going to let Trump run over those rights.
I'm a native Chicagoan as well, and one thing I know I enjoy is Chicagoans move. They are all about action. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited to see
Yeah.
exactly the turnout for Saturday. But we have a caller.
Okay.
Hi, caller.
Hi, Alderman. I'm calling because lead contamination in water is a really hot topic right now. And I wanted to see if you can talk about what you're doing in your ward to ensure that areas that might be contaminated are tested and eventually that the issue is corrected in those areas.
Absolutely. First of all, we had all our schools and all our Park District facilities tested, and I'm happy to report none of them showed any signs of undue amount of lead that would cause a threat to public health. We're also getting the word out to people who are having new water mains. In fact, we're having new water mains installed on Toohey Avenue this year. Work's already begun on Toohey between Western and Clark Street. And then later this summer, it'll be on Toohey from Clark Street all the way to Sheridan Road. And while the city pipes are not lead pipes, often many of the homes and apartment buildings on their personal property do have lead pipes. So we're making sure that people know that if that when the water is turned off to install the new city water mains, that they thoroughly flush their systems. They let the water run for a great amount of time to make sure that any lead that may have broken loose in their personal private pipes is totally flushed out of the system.
All right, thank you for calling in, caller. If you are just now tuning in, you are tuning in to Political Forum. I'm your host, Dartesia Pitts, and our guest this evening is Alderman Joe Moore from the 49th Ward. Please give us a call, join in on the discussion. So we're just, just talking about Obama out, Trump in, and Chicago.
Our need to be vigilant.
Yes.
Trump tries to enact legislation to make Muslims register, or to take away a woman's right to choose, or to take away our civil rights or civil liberties. We're going to be there to fight them every step of the way, and 49th Ward is ground zero in that battle.
And I love to hear that as an attorney. And so on the heels of all of this, with the new president, there is a new administration that comes with it, and we are going to potentially have a new attorney general. And last Friday, Friday the 13th of all the days, the DOJ reported their investigations and findings for this Chicago Police
The
Department.
Department of Justice.
Yes, right, the Department of Justice, DOJ. And a Chicago police officer was charged with first-degree murder in a recent off-duty shooting right after that came out. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that the Obama administration made sure that they issued a Department of Justice report before he left office. We have no idea, well, we do, and it's not a good idea. We're very concerned about the fact that the incoming administration and the likely Attorney General Jeff Sessions have an entirely different view of the role of the Justice Department, which I believe has been to, the role of the Justice Department is to safeguard people's rights and to challenge states and localities when they trample over those rights. So it was good to get that report out in time. The mayor, to his credit, has essentially agreed to abide by those recommendations. Some of them have already been implemented, but we need to be vigilant to make sure they're entirely implemented. And it remains to be seen whether the incoming administration will require the city to enter into a consent decree. But to me, it doesn't really matter. It's now part of the record. The recommendations are there, and the city should abide by them. And I believe they're serious in abiding by them. The Laquan McDonald video was a wake-up call to many people who didn't really realize just how bad relationships have been with the police in many of our communities. I think this ultimately not only will be good for our community to implement these reforms, it'll be good for the police officers who for far too long have been working under antiquated training and oftentimes don't have the guidance and the supervision that they need and want in order to begin to do their jobs effectively. In fact, the report revealed that they spoke with a lot of officers, and many of the officers themselves were very concerned about that they really didn't feel that they had the proper training and the proper guidance. And you know, my hope is and my confidence is that we will finally begin to implement some of those training and other things that and accountability and oversight that the police department and the police officers who work for that department need. But I'll tell you one thing we need to do, and I'm concerned that it hasn't happened as quickly as possible, and that is that we need to return to community policing. Early on in the early 1990s, when I first got elected and I campaigned on a platform of bringing community policing to Chicago, Chicago became the largest city at the time to implement community policing in a very serious way. Unfortunately, later on, Mayor Daley and took his eye off the ball, cut funding for the CAPS offices, and we kind of never fully implemented it. We need to go back to that. We need to make sure that that community policing becomes part and parcel of everyday policing, and that every police officer has daily encounters, not just with people who are committing crimes, who are victim of crime, but ordinary citizens, ordinary residents, and to begin to develop the kind of partnership you need to really make our neighborhoods safer.
I actually agree with you. Community policing is all about both
Yep.
the community and well as the well-being of our police officers and law enforcement. We have a caller. Hi, caller.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking my call. I heard you a moment ago talking about the DOJ report, And I just wanted to know if the alderman had any opinion on a former police superintendent, Gary McCarthy, and some of the comments he made in the CBS interview, particularly, in light of some of the things that were discovered in the DOJ report, sort of versus what he said on CBS.
Well, certainly Superintendent McCarthy, through his 5-year tenure on the police department, has a very interesting perspective. I agree with some of it. I disagree with some of it. Part I disagree with is not so much that he dismissed community policing, but that really wasn't didn't enter into his discussion. And I do really think that has to be an important part of any police reforms, is a return to full implementation of community policing with having the community as partners, and particularly not viewing community activists as necessarily the enemy or people to be trusted. Instead, bring them in, learn what they have to say, get it from their perspective, and then be able to implement reforms. I think one thing that he did say that is I totally agree with is morale at the police department is at a low ebb, and I think the reason it is because there hasn't been enough leadership and direction from the top of the police department to really provide the training necessary to have the kind of skills in de-escalating conflicts and not resorting to using your weapon, whether it be a gun or a taser, as the first method to trying to maintain order. But there are a lot of good techniques where you can de-escalate a situation. Also, I think it's also important that we imbue in the police department a culture of respect for the community. It's important for police officers to maintain authority, but I also think that there have been too many instances where certain segments of our city feel that they are not treated respectfully when they encounter police officers. Some of that began to change under McCarthy's reign, but it hasn't happened fast enough, and we really need to make sure that police officers, when they encounter a citizen, that they treat that citizen respectfully and with dignity, even if that isn't necessarily returned by the person who they're encountering. And I understand how difficult it may be to have someone who insults you, who belittles you, and all that. But as someone who's clothed with the authority of government and who has a badge and a gun, it's important to nonetheless respond with as much professionalism and respect as possible when trying to handle a situation.
What I think is awesome about the task that Chicago is going through is that if implemented properly and correctly, we could actually be the model city for the rest of the nation.
That's right.
So this is a great time for opportunity.
You view this as an opportunity, not something to shy away from or be embarrassed by, but to embrace. City of Los Angeles went through something very similar 20 years ago. We had the Rodney King incident, the riots in Watts. There are some very serious problems with the Los Angeles Police Department, and I will say, while things aren't perfect in Los Angeles right now, we do have a much better situation there with community and police relationships, and gun violence is far lower than that, both in terms of numbers as well as per capita in the city of Los Angeles. And I think part of that is because there's been an element of trust between the community and the police in Los Angeles that enables the police to address some of the violence issues before they begin, and to solve some of the crimes, particularly gun violence crimes, because in order to do both those things, you need to have the confidence of the community, because the community, they're the ones that share the information and information is power, and information it provides the knowledge for the police to be able to head off crimes before they occur, and also to solve those that have already occurred.
Great opportunity for healing and building.
Absolutely.
We have another caller.
Yes, I wanted to make a couple of points, if I might. Um, First of all, sometimes we're compared to New York and Los Angeles relative to what's going on in terms of our policing. And to be fair, that is an unfair comparison. Places like New York, quite frankly, have pushed out the poor people in terms of New York proper, as such that you don't necessarily have as much crime because you don't have the poor element where crime tends to be generated. And the same thing in many ways is true of Los Angeles. Many parts of Los Angeles that 25 years ago were places that people would not go. Today, places that have been gentrified and poor people have been pushed out. So again, a place that has a Starbucks that once used to be gang hangout is not somewhere that you're going to have a drive-by shooting any longer. Whereas Chicago, we still have a vibrant gang presence here.
I think we lost our
We lost
caller.
him. But
Great points, though.
He made some good points.
Yeah.
I'd like to flip it on its head, though. Yeah, there's been gentrification. There's been gentrification in Chicago, too. Mm-hmm. What we've seen in Chicago, more so than New York and Los Angeles, is a concentration of poverty, unlike those other two cities. And I think the point I'd like to see is to try to reduce that concentration of poverty, to give people who live in those neighborhoods an opportunity to be able to not be isolated in those communities. First, bring jobs and economic development to those neighborhoods, but also increase mobility, so that if to provide more housing opportunities in parts of the city that so far are unaffordable or unavailable to folks with low incomes. I'm chairman of the City Council Committee on Housing, and one of the things that I'm, really am trying to do is to make sure that housing opportunities are available, low income and affordable housing opportunities are available in all parts of the city, including my own. We're a very economically diverse community, and guess what? In our community, we actually had a percentage drop in shootings last year. The rest of the city saw shootings up 72% citywide. In the 49th Ward, they were down 16%. And you know why that? Because we don't have the same kind of concentration of poverty that other areas of the city have. We have crime, we have violence, we've had our share of gang activity and shootings, but where the rest of the city's going up, we're coming down. And part of it is because we've got good community policing in our neighborhoods, we've got communities that are involved, and we don't have a concentration of poverty. We have about 20% of the people in my neighborhood live below the poverty rate, so we have a lot of folks who are struggling economically, but crime has gone down.
You have an interesting and a very unique ward because you have such a diverse ward with such diverse demographics, which is kind of unheard of for some of Chicago's other pockets.
Right. Chicago's known as one of the most segregated cities in the world.
Right. So that's an interesting and unique. It also could be used as a model ward to see how we can fix some other things in the city. We have a caller, and then we have to wrap up the show.
Yes, good evening. I'm just trying to find out where we stand on the Airbnb regulations. I know that something passed in the fall. I just want to get an update now because I know in my community I'm seeing it inundated, housing inundated with people coming in and coming out, and it's kind of changed the dynamic of the neighborhood.
Where do you live in?
I live in Lakeview.
Lakeview, yeah. Lakeview, Lincoln Park, they're both are areas that have really experienced it. We passed an ordinance that I think is really represents a good balance between neighborhoods such as yours that are being inundated by Airbnbs, you're losing the residential character of your communities, and other communities that welcome Airbnbs. My neighborhood, for example, I actually welcome them. We haven't had the inundation that some other neighborhoods have, but it gives people an opportunity to see my neighborhood, people traveling from outside who might not otherwise have seen Rogers Park. So in neighborhoods like yours, we now give condominium associations and landlords the ability to say, hey, no more Airbnbs in my building. Number two, we limit the number of Airbnbs that can be in any given neighborhood so that we make sure that no neighborhood becomes overrun by them to a point where they just become, virtual hotel zones, and you lose the neighborhood flavor. So the ordinance is in effect now, and sir, if you live in a condominium association or an apartment building, make sure you talk to your association or your association board or your landlord to make sure that they ban them from your building if that's what you want.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Moore, for joining us.
Yeah, we only scratched the surface.
I know, 25 minutes goes by so quick. Thank you for joining us at Political Forum every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, talking to your electeds. See you next week. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.